forget what it should be or could be and face what is. And whatever it is, there's prices for us to pay to deal with it. And as long as you're living and breathing, you've got the capacity to make the excellent moves for yourself to make your life as good as it can be. And that's what we can do. I can't even think. I don't even know what has happened since we last talked. 2 weeks. So I can't think of any big news items now other than the Olympics are on.
Right.
But it's such as life. All right. How you doing just generally?
All's good so far. I'm kind of excited to get to some of the questions. So
Good.
it's
Good.
the one of our well we can the question we ended with last time we're going to leave to the end of this show if we get to it because it was kind of
Okay.
similar theme. But this week, our first question is as follows. So, dear Dr. Lisle, how do I get back to being happy with so much violence and negativity swirling around in the news and in the world? No matter what's been going on in my life, I've always tended to be happy and optimistic, but recently it feels like everything seems pretty bleak in the world and is bringing me down. I truly don't have any reason to be unhappy. I'm part of a magic 10% marriage. I have a good job, great friends, I make good money, and truly I want for nothing, but I'm fighting the feeling of sadness and anxiousness about everything going on around me, even though I don't watch the news and I'm not on social media. What say you?
Huh. Um, well, all feelings, all of them, from the smallest sensation of a hangnail to, you know, great excitement or great tragedy. All of these things is they are basically feedback mechanisms to orient the organism towards a relationship between itself and the environment. So the there are feelings that are essentially telling the organism about relationships of parts of itself to other parts of itself. So if you have a broken leg, for example, then the parts that were normally supposed to be integrated are disintegrated, and therefore then we've got a bunch of pain sensors and all kinds of stuff telling us that the integrity of the architecture of the body is compromised. And so, however, that is also a fact of reality of your relationship to your environment. So now you've got signaling that you're going to have problems with some of your bodily functions in order to essentially maintain your fight against entropy that is trying to ultimately or will pull you into the dust sooner or later. Okay. Hopefully later. Now, so, but
Here
what
to
your
my eye.
feelings are,
Yeah.
yeah, what your feelings is they run a gamut from the worst possible feeling that you can imagine, i.e., being torn apart by by wasps or birds or great white shark, and your entire family and your entire gene pool right next to you, and they're all going down at the same time. That is probably the most horrifying, painful thing that could ever happen in some ways. There would be, in principle, some way to maximize both the physical pain receptors and maximize the anguish.
We'll
Just
leave that
thinking
to
about that,
yeah, we'll leave that to
just for
somebody else.
fun,
Yeah.
just for fun with that. That's fine. So yeah. If an enemy, you think about an enemy, like that's the old thing that, gee, I wouldn't even do that to my worst enemy. It's like, well, you haven't met Klaus Schwab yet, but anyway, but in any event, your ability to feel has a continuum, and that continuum isn't strictly linear, it's multidimensional. So it's a whole bunch of things that are on a linear scale that go from the worst possible to the best possible. So you have the worst possible taste that you could ever have in your mouth that's going to absolutely make you vomit, and the best possible taste in your mouth that's going to make you incredibly excited about chewing and swallowing whatever that thing is. And that's going to go with, kinetic sensation. The most exciting thing is going to be just the thing that physically is going to take you to orgasm. And then the worst possible thing is going to be the most acute pain that you could imagine of something that you would go through physically. The best possible thing would be, the things that would be obviously the tremendous gains in your current circumstances towards increased statistical likelihood of gene survival, i.e., meeting the love of your life. Okay. That thinking that this is an incredible genetic deal, and I think I qualify, and they qualify, and I'm extremely attracted to them, and they seem extremely attracted to me. So therefore, your brain is calculating that as extraordinarily outstanding change in your circumstances with respect to gene survival probability. That is exactly what that is. Okay. So you have gone from doing pretty well in life to then suddenly you have a hot date and it's like, whoa. Okay, so now we've moved that feeling way to the right. Okay, so the system is highly sensitive to changes in circumstances. Even a little bit of change of basically on a pretty nice day, cloud gets in front of the sun. You can actually feel slightly maudlin even in that few seconds. Okay, that's because that's a part of a typical human genetic code is to feel more optimistic in the sunshine and a little bit of trepidation when there's cloud cover. Why? Well, because it's associated with an impending possible storm, and that impending possible storm is more dangerous than it is good, usually. Okay. Now, all of this is to say that your feelings are nothing other than your brain's best guess about what your relationship is to your environment. Okay. So if you're telling me that your life has all these really good circumstances, but you're actually anxious and depressed, then anxiety is the feature of the organism that tells it that there is a potential impending loss. And the greater degree of the anxiety, the greater the loss. Okay, the more the system, you can be, you can be almost certain that you're going to lose this poker hand, and almost certain that in that poker hand you're going to lose $50. Okay, and that $50 doesn't mean that much to you, but it's not nothing. Okay, so you're going to feel some degree of anxiety, but that degree of anxiety is commensurate with what that means with respect to your brain's ability to calculate gene survival probabilities. So you can see that there's actually two variables that are involved there: the probability that you're going to lose the hand and how much you're going to lose, and what that means relative to your gene survival probability. That's why it is that you have the amount of anxiety that you do with respect to that hand. You can imagine that if you have 5 sponsors that have believed in you and that you've been a down and out, heroin using deadbeat, but you're actually quite brilliant, and you have now come to the final table of the World Series of Poker, and it's backed by everybody else's money that, quote, believed in you to give you one more shot. Okay. And now here comes the cards, and now you're about to try to pull off. You're trying to essentially call somebody's bluff and maybe bluff them back at an extremely important moment, in what's happening at the final table. They'll make the difference between you walking away with $160,000 or 2 million. Okay. And 2 million obviously would have enormous consequences for your existence. How much anxiety do you have now? Probably quite a bit. Okay. Not as much as if we were, quote, we were been kidnapped by hooligans, from some foreign country for ransom, and they were playing a card game with us on their honor that we was playing for our lives. Okay, so your anxiety is principled. It's coming from evolutionarily built algorithms that are designed by nature to estimate both the probability and the net gene survival value, i.e., the intensity of the loss that you could experience. Okay, so one of the things that one would do is one would actually use a pencil and paper and write down as best you can, what am I actually thinking I could lose? And the answer is, you've got a pretty good life. You probably have a lot to lose. So when we look at that, you're actually looking for cues of the environment that tell you about the statistical probability that you will lose those things. You say, well, I'm not connected to social media, et cetera. But obviously, you know that a lot of shit's happening in the world. So you're connected enough to it to effectively be inferring about the probabilities with respect to the losses that you could experience, which could be, very substantial. You could go from really outstanding circumstances for a human, unparalleled in human history, actually. In other words, magic 10% marriage, good job, plenty of money, living in a Western democracy. You know what I mean? You're not having to go fight for you're not having to fight predators or fight other village tribesmen from down the river. In other words, your circumstances are extremely good. And as a result, because they're extremely good, you have a lot to lose. That you are aware that life could go on and could go on under much worse circumstances than the ones that you're in. And so therefore, there's actually quite a lot to lose. And as a result of that, you're getting news from your social environment, which is exactly where you should be getting your news from. In other words, you're designed by nature to be computer checking with other brains in order to reduce the likelihood that you're going to be making a catastrophic mistake and underestimating a worst case scenario. So you're designed by nature that if you've got any awareness at all of anything, to not only turn your head and check and see whether or not that's a problem, but also ask other people if you can't see. So now you're aware that there's in effect, nefarious actors out in the world that are actually out to get your life circumstances. They're out to suck resources from you. That is what they're doing. In other words, the people that are out there in the world that are a problem are angry and militant or devious. And what they are wanting is they are wanting more resources. Well, who are they going to get it from? They're going to get them from ever who's got them. Well, who is that? Well, we're going to target people that we can, basically intimidate, bluff, squeeze, or force the resources out of them. Okay. So if you're a little not too bright Social Security recipient without any net worth in the United States, paying rent somewhere in Birmingham, Alabama, and you're 71 years old and in sort of declining health, and you don't have any children that can support you, you're damn straight you're nervous when your rent goes up $50, but your Social Security check goes up 13. Okay. So it's like you are aware that you are a sitting duck for effectively having to reduce your quality of existence behind a reduction of resource flow that you thought one day was going to be better than it is, but is now declining because the government of the United States has seen fit to steal a phenomenal amount of money, a tremendous amount of money in the last few years by inflating the currency, which is nothing other than a way to steal money from humans. Okay, it is in fact the most efficient way to do it. They don't know what's happening. They don't understand it. Everybody's confused. I read an analysis of a bunch of people arguing, and economists arguing over what caused the current inflation. Not a single one of them had it right. Okay. They're like, well, it's too much. They printed too much money relative to the. It's like, no. If they print $1, they have undermined the value of the dollar that you hold. It's not too much. If human beings are making innovations in the ability to manufacture, then prices should all be uniformly declining. They should not be staying even. And in fact, human beings innovate in Western democracies at the level of 3% a year. That's what the human brain is able to do under a free enterprise system. It probably can do better than that. It's probably being constrained by 1% or 2% by government policies, probably maybe a couple percent. It's possible that this animal actually innovates at 5% a year. If it does, I mean, that's spectacular, by the way. It would mean that it would take 14 years to double the productive capacity every year, every 14 years. Instead, we double our productive capacity about every 25 years, about every 22, 24, about 24 years. Law of 72 in mathematics. So but the point is that should mean that all of the prices that you see for everything that you have should be declining by 3% a year. Wow, that's what it should be. And then I'll hear people say, oh, no, that would be terrible for the economy because it's like they've got a convoluted lack of logic. It's like, oh, that's been really bad for the economy to have big screen TVs go from $10,000 to $400. That's been a bad thing. Okay. What if everything did that? And you'd be like, well, that can't be. It's like, oh, yes, it can be. And it has been in history when governments were not inflating currencies. Inflating currency is somebody's counterfeiting money. They are going and spending it before the market prices actually can fully reflect it across the marketplace what is actually happening, that the currency has actually been devalued, and they are stealing resources out of the, not to mention, it's not that they're just counterfeiting currency. They are spending it. They're actually swooping resources out of the productive economy by not earning anything, but literally coming to the table with counterfeit. Like, they're counterfeiters. Okay. So that is it's other than just straight taxation, it's the biggest business in the world. In other words, governments are the biggest business in the world. So it's no surprise that what do you see when you worry about the future of the world? What you mean by that is you're worried about government action. That's what you're worried about. Okay. You're worried about foreign governments impacting you here in the United States. You're worried about the United States government impacting you. In other words, any way you look at it, the anxiety that you have is about governments. And governments do two things that are extremely expensive. They use force and they use deception. Okay. There are 5 ways for a human being to get resources. They can either get it themselves, they can trade honestly with another person for it, they can whine and cry like a child and hope to get altruistic action on the part of somebody that has resources and given to them. They can force by threat or actual force take it, or they can use deception and take it and you not know what they did. Inflation is a deceptive use. It is also forced. In other words, they don't want you to have a parallel economy that uses Bitcoin. Okay. Oh, no, they wouldn't want that because they want to make sure that they're able to do what? Use force to tax you. Okay. So it's force, 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 force all over the place. Force and deception, force and deception, force and deception. Okay. Well, don't think that that goes unnoticed. People are aware that they are under the threats of force and deception. And so as a result of that, they are particularly uncomfortable about force. Why? Because it's force. It's somebody who's putting a gun to your head or a knife in your ribs and telling you, you are going to do this or I'll kill you. Okay? I will incarcerate you. In other words, basically, incarceration it's the threat of death. So, you're not going to take a vaccine? We're going to incarcerate you. Okay, in other words, this is governmental force is scary, and the anxieties that this person is having, if you actually get yourself completely centered on what those are, they're about government force. If it's just deception, we'd be fine. But the problem is that governments act as collective action, and so it's a whole group of people with guns. And so the point is that if the public has been deceived into giving people power, you know what I mean, and it's been coerced and deceived into giving people power that they are now dangerous because they are going to abuse that power, then what you're really worried about is force. I'm not worried about government deception at all. I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less what the people at the FDA say to everybody. It doesn't make any difference to me. Okay. What makes a difference to me is that when I'm subject to the force of those individuals and that my fellow man goes along with it and votes for these things, unbeknownst to the fact that they're being incredibly deceived. And so therefore, we welcome our own rulers. We welcome our own subjugation. And it's not our responsibility. We aren't smart enough to know what the hell is going on. So you do live in a world that has threats. You always have. There's always been other animals, from fleas to lions to other humans that have been out to get your resources. It's always been that way. It always will. Okay. However, there are circumstances that are more benign than others. No question. If you go into a forest and it's full of ticks all over the place, you're in shitty circumstances. You go to somewhere else by a nice river with some flowers and some peach trees, and it turns out that there's no large predators in the area and there's no mosquitoes, you're in pretty damn good circumstances. There are better circumstances and worse circumstances, and those are objective. Okay. In other words, there are, even though I've got very serious disagreements with Sam Harris. But he did, the guy's not without brains, and he wrote a fine book called The Moral Landscape, which argues extremely convincingly, and I believe definitively, that there are morally superior circumstances than others. Okay, so the if you live in a world filled with deception and force, you are in a shitty set of circumstances unless you're the one administering it. Then it's optimal. Okay, it's basically optimal for you to be in a position of using force and deception in order to get resources out of other people because it's easier. It's an energy conserving strategy. It is a more efficient strategy for getting the resources. That is why Bill Gates does it. Okay, that is precisely why Bill Gates does it, because Bill Gates does not want to actually compete value for value in the marketplace with other entrepreneurs and young people that are smarter than he is and that will come up stuff in better in the marketplace than he'll come up with. He has no interest in that. Being the unprincipled, amoral animal that he is absolutely interested in using deception and force, and that is precisely what his life is about. Okay. And you're going to see it everywhere. You're going to see it in Jeff Bezos. He is absolutely one of those people. You're going to see people that when they get the upper hand, and it doesn't make them bad people, it makes them a human, which means it makes them an animal. It turns out that you have spectacularly good human beings that actually are looking for a benign situation with a set of rules where we don't use force and fraud. That was called the Constitution of the United States, based, on the Declaration of the United States Principles, that actually sets up a rule-based system where we don't use force and fraud. Okay, well, that's been, adulterated and corrupted pretty badly. And so now this government looks an awful lot like other governments. Okay. And what governments are is when anybody gets control, they start using that control in order to do what? Outlaw all other currencies, make our currency sovereign, start inflating the currency, start stealing money, start taxing, all bullshit that you see. Now, what this person is seeing is that they are seeing turbulence where people are aware that this is a problem. That you can't steal from people and lie to people and force people to do things without them noticing. They will notice. And because we've got enough free speech in the world, you're hearing people squawk. And so if you're in the world now, you're realizing, Jesus, that, there's a lot of heat. There's a lot of big players with a lot of guns that there's a tremendous amount of effort going into force and fraud in order to grab resources. And there's something desperate about the times that we live in. True. Okay. If you look at the amount of national debt in the United States as it's increased in the last 4 years, the national debt has increased by over 50%. So there's been there's been a massive amount. I may be mistaken about that. It's gone up a lot. What we have is
the interest that's gone up, I think, also.
The amount of money in circulation has gone up by more than 50%. So that is a staggering event. So just so the people know that when as the money, all of the new money that they have put into circulation, that is money that they have stolen from you. That is what that is. When they counterfeit, if you have a counterfeiter that lives next door to you, and the two of you are trying to buy, you're the only two buyers in your village. There's 3 buyers in the village for this lady that makes really nice art. Okay. So you all 3 really like her paintings and you can't wait for the next one. But the guy next door to you is a counterfeiter. He can outbid you and he will outbid you. Okay. And because he's outbidding you, the next one that you buy is going to cost more. And yet you don't make any more money because that's how that works. Anyway. So what do I think about this? Well, I think about a statement that I heard by one of my favorite, teacher, mentor, philosophers 40 years ago. Actually closer to 50. 50 years ago, I heard I was probably about 15 years old. I heard the wonderful motivational speaker, Mr. E. James Rohn, and he said he said he was speaking to a bunch of business people, and they were worried about the economy. 1975, this would have been, and and because he's successful and he's charming and handsome and well dressed and smooth as hell. Okay, that was Jim Rohn.
At
And
least it was only 50 years ago, though. So,
yeah, so uh, so Jim Rohn said they all gather around and they say, we're worried about where it's going. What's going to happen in the next year. And Jim Rohn said, well, I know what's going to happen the next year. And they all gathered around, all anxious, what's it going to be like in the next year? And Jim Rohn said, it's going to be like about how it's always been. It's about what it's going to be like in the next year. There's going to be adversity mixed with opportunity. That's what's going to be. And so as you look with anxiety and feel, quote, anxiety and depression, which depression is going to be essentially a different location on the dimension of feeling in a slightly different location than anxiety, we can see why it is that they would have subtly different flavors. Anxiety is the feeling that you have something vulnerable that could be lost. Depression is the feeling that you cannot get the resource that you seek. Okay, so those are two separate things. So in this case, the depression is I cannot get the state of affairs with respect to governments and my fellow man where I am not under threat from them attempting to use force and deception in order to take resources away from me. I thought that I could get to such a place, but I'm now becoming convinced that I cannot get to such a place. And that feels terrible. It feels like a funeral. Okay. That's bad. It's a deep, awful feeling that I can't get there. The anxiety is I'm in a place where there are these forces at work that are attempting to do this, and I have a lot of assets, and I could lose those assets. I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about your freedom. I'm talking about your ability to trade with other people. I'm talking about your ability to get work because you have a thriving economy where there's enough of a free enterprise spirit in it. And now if we eliminate that through socialist equality, draconian expropriating fiasco that a Bill Gates or Klaus Schwab would want to impose on the world, or George Soros, if you have that kind of a situation going on, you will wind up, you understand that you're going to wind up with a very sluggish economy without any growth, without any great opportunity. And if you wind up on the wrong side of the fence with respect to some problem, you could actually not be able to thrive economically. Okay, that's bad. In other words, wow, that could be how my life turns out. I actually wind up in relatively uncomfortable bunch of insecurity and material deprivation. Don't want to do it. I don't want to live in the middle of Soviet Russia. Okay, so that is actually when one speaks of the world today and its problems, you can get distracted by all kinds of stuff. Trans issues, Black Lives Matter, a riot somewhere. That's all not a big deal. Those are symptoms of an underlying process of the erosion of the rule of law, private property, and effectively the Constitution of the United States and any other half-assed decent constitution that used to exist somewhere else and has now been corrupted. Okay, so that's what that's how that goes down. So the feeling that you're feeling is the turbulence socially that is between the gang that is trying to impose this kind of control through deception and force, and the people that are aligned with them that think that that's in their best interest or that that's morally right or that that's a good way to do it. Those people are being deeply deceived or they're ruthlessly dishonest and they don't want to compete openly. But I think most of the people that are on that side of the spectrum that are behind any of those things are well-meaning people that are completely lost and they have no idea what the deep water that the world is in. The people on the other side that actually understand the theoretical paradise that could exist theoretically between people, if you actually had a rule of law where you did not have force and fraud being driving major forces, we always know that they are going to be minor forces. We always know that there's force and fraud out there. We always know that if we have a country or we have a house that somebody else may want resources out of it, that we have to protect it and that it's subject to possible, take over. And we always know that we could lose our life from somebody who wants to steal gold teeth out of our head. We understand that, okay? But we also understand, just like if you're in a thicket with a tremendous amount of ticks, or you're on a nice river somewhere with flowers and peaches without any large predators and no mosquitoes, we understand that there are objectively different circumstances and that there are circumstances that are objectively superior to other circumstances. We understand that intuitively, okay? So the anxiety and depression that you feel is actually a component of it is absolutely realistic warning and realistic warning for what could have been and should be, but is not. Okay. So now we have to face squarely what it is that exists and understand that the United States government and other governments is now dangerous. The United States government was never designed by the forefathers to be anything like the player that it is. It was designed to be the federal government was designed to be a minor player in people's lives. Okay. As Thomas Jefferson said, the government that governs best governs least. Okay. This was the idea. There was no federal income tax. There was no currency, national currency. None of that existed. Okay. What this was supposed to be a confederation of independent states, and that people get to vote for themselves what they want their government to look like, what their tax structure might look like, how many public things, how much essentially general welfare, whatever. And you can have 50 different states run very, very differently. What you don't have is a 20, 30, 40, 50% federal income tax. You do not have that. Okay. So that was the forefathers never imagined such a thing. That thing took over in the 20th century. Okay. So it is what it is. The turbulence exists. It is scary. It is dangerous. There is potentially a tremendous amount to be lost. It probably won't be. Okay. Probably your life as you're now living it, probably 10 years from now, it looks very similar to the life that you have now. Okay. It is also useful to know that you actually, with some intelligence and awareness and some resources and some capability, you can insulate yourself from the worst of this. Okay, so there are a couple of books that I would have people read that are 2 or 3 or 4. There are several books that have impacted me in a positive way, that make me ultimately feel not despairing over the existing situation or any future situations. How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World is a document that tells you that the way the governments work, as dangerous as they are and as ruthless as they are, and that they could be tremendous threats to you, the truth of the matter is that you're faster than they are. They move slowly. Okay. You can see them coming a mile away. They're a big freight train that you can't stop, but you don't have to be on the track and get hit. Okay. And so it's useful to know that whatever the governments do, you can almost always think and act your way around them, and they shouldn't be a limiting factor in your ability to trade with other people, to do your job, to accumulate resources, and to enjoy your days. Okay. So we don't have to, quote, fight for freedom or get freedom before we can be largely free. How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World is the notion that the freedoms that you seek, and the most important ones, you can probably get. Now, you can't get that if you're living under a dictatorship in Somalia. Okay. You can't get that if you're an 80 IQ gerbil somewhere in I don't know, Colombia, and the drug lords are running everything about your life, and you don't have a lot of options. But if you are you, the person who asked this question, the people that would be listening to this podcast, you are smart enough, you are resourceful enough. There are things that you can do and that you can learn about. A second book is called The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley. So this will tell you a bit of the nature. Matt Ridley is extremely well aware of everything that I'm talking about. He was more optimistic then than he would be now. But even now, Matt Ridley, would say there's a lot of freedom in the world. There's a lot of freedom that's going to be able to be protected in the world. There's plenty of opportunity for people to exploit that freedom in spending the time and hours of their life doing things that they want to do or would be valuable for other people and for them to be compensated. But for goodness sakes, this would be a time in your life, if you haven't made it a reasonably high priority, learn about what to do about your assets, how to make sure you're accumulating some assets, because you just like you want to have money in the bank in case you get sick and you can't work, you also want to have money in the bank and knowledge about what to do about things in case in your particular country start to go significantly sideways. Okay, so is there reason for your anxiety and your depression? Yes. Those are signals that are coming to you as you calculate the possibility of losses that have already incurred and significant losses that could take place in the future. Those signals are there for a reason, okay? If those signals are there in a deep, heavy way that is making your life, significantly less happy than it was before, that's because you've learned things about the world that have convinced you that there are threats that are actually need to be taken seriously. That's a good thing. The depression and anxiety that you're having is potentially enormously prophylactic against you incurring some of those losses by effectively warning you that they could be coming. So pay heed, get smart. You know what I'm saying? If all of this is like, if it's over your head and what I'm saying is over your head, then it's over your head. But if it's not over your head, read the Bitcoin Standard, learn about what the hell is going on in the world's government. Be paying attention to the differences in countries. My brilliant colleague Jen Hawk, who has wild ideas that go all different places. Some of them I agree with, and some of them that I don't. But one of them is that she said to me, Doug, the freedom is going to be in the failed states. Okay, where basically the government's so haywire that it controls all kinds of things, but they're so incompetent that they can't really get anything done. They'll never be able to find you and pay attention to what it is that you're doing. And I laughed about that, and I still kind of chuckle about it because I don't think that I'm going to have to live my life in a failed state. I think I'm going to be able to live my life just fine in the United States of America. However, I'm going to be paying attention. Okay, I'm going to be paying attention to the way the wind's blowing. I'm going to be paying attention to the use of government force. I'm going to be listening more carefully to government fraud when it gets outrageous, as it did with COVID. And I'm going to be paying attention to what's happening during those times and trying to insulate myself as much as possible. In other words, you used to live in a land where there was no, where there was no, I don't know, leopards. Okay. So your little village hadn't seen a leopard in 25 years. There were stuff about it, before you were born, if you're 26 years old, you're like, oh yeah, there used to be a leopard. Okay. Well, you haven't seen a leopard in 25 years and nobody else has either. So we forgot about leopards. And then, I don't know, a big, 100 million acres somewhere burned next to us and a bunch of wildlife migrated their way to our area, and it turns out we've got leopards again. Okay, you've got leopards again. You should be anxious about the fact that they're leopards again. It should make your existence essentially one notch less happy than it was before, because there's threats there that we have to be aware of and that we have to spend a certain amount of time paying attention to. Okay, that's true. Does our life end and is it wrecked and is it terrible that we have to put up with the fact that there's leopards? No. It means that there's risks now in the environment that we're aware of that are substantial. It means that we have to go to the trouble of spending time and energy on prophylactic activities that we didn't have to before. Fair enough. Okay. So that's how I look at this. How I found freedom in an unfreedom world, and also understanding and learning enough about economics. Plenty in the Bitcoin standard all by itself about economics. For if there's things that you don't know or things that you ought to know, etc. You know, it's important to be suspicious of the people that are anywhere in charge and have their hands anywhere close to your money. It's like you would like that to not be true, and there was a time in America where that you didn't have to worry about that. But those times are gone. The leopards are now roaming around. They are sighted often. Okay. So, I mean, they are seen often. So, therefore, you have to know that they're there and you have to plan your life accordingly. And if you do, your life can be excellent, really more according to the other things in your life rather than this. But if you fall asleep on this one, you know what I mean? Then you may pay some big prices. You may not. You may blissfully, you're like Mr. Magoo and you're drunk on the freeway and miraculously you miss everybody. That could easily and reasonably be true, but that is not happening now. You have tens of millions of little retired Americans that are having their life savings and investments stolen from them by a corrupt government. Okay, that is happening right in front of our eyes, and it is happening so subtly and so ruthlessly that nobody notices. They just shrug their shoulders, and nobody knows what to do about it. You know, and that's because very, very clever and deceptive people are in power. All right. I think that's enough for one day. Let's take one more question.
Yeah, this person has discovered that this is their threshold. You know, some people
Ah,
would have waited another 10 years and then they get nervous and then they get anxious,
right,
depressed. Other
right,
people, it happened 10 years ago. You know, they
right,
started getting
right.
20 years ago. So
Really well said. You know, I was caught blindsided by how corrupt our government was in COVID. And I had no idea the level of the corruption. Now it's obvious to me. But I was aware of this, by the way, all the way back in 1980. So in 1980, I became acquainted with Harry Browne and I read a magnificent book that he wrote called You Can Profit from a Monetary Crisis. That was the finest single explanation of economics that I have ever seen to this day. So a person that wants to understand governments, economics, how trade works, the nature of pricing, structures, profits, everything. If you want to understand how an economy is supposed to run and how it doesn't run, the first 100 pages of how You Can Profit from a Monetary Crisis, forget about the second half. The book was written in 1974, so it's well out of date to our current circumstances. Surprisingly good prescriptions, by the way. Okay, so but however, that's in the past. But understanding economics at effectively, you want to be able to understand it at the level that a 5-year-old can have a conversation with you. You want to be good enough to talk like a 5-year-old, so a 5-year-old can tell you that there's a bear over there behind the trash can. And da, 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 da. You want to know enough about economics that you aren't stupid enough to read 10 economists telling why we have an inflation problem, and you can realize, yeah, you're all wrong. You've all got pieces of the truth, but you're actually missing how it should be. If you read You Can Profit from a Monetary Crisis, you will be in a position to understand that very easily. It's not that complicated. It's just complicated enough. But you are absolutely right. This is about thresholds. Okay. So literally since 1982, I have not had any interest in political economic processes in the United States. Literally for 40 years, I'm like, what do I care? Nice free country, perfectly decent property rights respected. You know, nobody's going to force me around by gunpoint to do anything. Nobody's talking about a vaccine passport, and then I may not be able to leave California, or my kid can't go to school, et cetera, et cetera. I saw a beautiful post the other day, by the way. There was an extraordinary example of the impact of government and big pharma. And that was, it showed the list of vaccines in like 1984 that were recommended and required. It's like 6 of them. Okay. It shows what they are now. It's like E337. It's like, really? That's what happened. Okay. That's what it's completely and utterly out of control. And if you don't give your children those things, they cannot go to public school. Okay. It's like, okay, I see how this works. What the hell is that about? That's not about protecting the public. That is a bunch of draconian. There's a reason why Bill Gates is super interested in vaccines because they are easily wedded to government force. And you not only that, you get governments to pay for them for the quote general welfare.
Right. But think of
This
the
is a
children.
this is save the children.
Yeah.
This is a bunch of deep people that don't know what that they're looking at, and almost very few people do. You're looking at a deep, awful, amoral criminality that effectively exists in humans. If you're looking at it, it's not. It's a little scary to look at it. It's a little disturbing once you understand that it's there. But once you understand that it's there, it's no different than when you were on the Kalahari and you had to worry about leopards. It's like, okay, we got to worry about it. Okay. If we're smart, we can protect ourselves. If we're stupid, we're going to be like lambs to the slaughter. Okay. You've got to be smart. You got to be prudent. You have to go to some trouble that feels unfair because it doesn't have to be this way. But forget how it should be and face squarely what is. That's true with anything in any relationship that you have to reality. Forget what it should be or could be and face what is. And whatever it is, there's prices for us to pay to deal with it. And as long as you're living and breathing, you've got the capacity to make the excellent moves for yourself to make your life as good as it can be. And that's what we can do.
So, Dr. Lisle, are you saying that what can be unburdened by what has been? So...
Oh God,
Dear Dr. Lisle, I'm a 25-year-old woman and I'm unmotivated. I have no career, no passions or purpose in life because my family's extremely rich. I'm set to inherit a ton of money, like tens of millions of dollars from my parents. So basically, I'm set for life if I do absolutely nothing for the rest of it. I didn't go to college because I kind of knew I was going to inherit all this money and I didn't think it was worth it. Now I literally don't know what to do with my life. Other people need to work to live, but I have more money than they will ever make in their lifetime, and I didn't even do anything to earn it. My parents tell me to do whatever I want because I'll be rich anyway. I'm embarrassed to date because I have no interesting personality characteristics. I have no career. I'm unmotivated, no passions, no purpose in life. I'm just a spoiled rich girl who inherited daddy's money. Who's going to love me for who I am? How am I going
yes.
to spend the next 50 years of my life? I feel unmotivated to do anything because I'm already rich, but then I feel guilty for having nothing to offer to the world. What should I do?
Yes. Yeah. Well, what you're not going to do is become Bill Gates's wife and donate a bunch of money to, socialist leftist causes to take over the world. That would be a bad idea. Okay. Now, the what can you do? Well, actually, the good news is that your life and your life experience and its future is entirely in your hands. That's the beautiful thing. Okay. So the beautiful thing is that what you have inside of your head is you have actually neural circuits in the same way that you have neural circuits to basically there's neural circuits in my fingertip here that if I take a needle and I start to put pressure on there and then ultimately puncture it, I will be in pain. Okay. There's no way to stop that. Even if I'm Yogi Nana Brahmananda and I go into a deep state, I'm still going to feel some pain when it comes to doing that tissue damage because that's how it's designed. Now, the and there are happiness circuits inside your head. You can't stop your nervous system probably if you're like most people from liking greatly the taste of good chocolate. Basically impossible. You can't not like that. Okay. You may be born not liking it because you may have some particular genetic configuration that doesn't like the taste of chocolate, but you would be rare in human beings if that's how you were built. So if you have the normal I like chocolate circuits, then when we put chocolate in your mouth, you're going to have a very pleasant sensation, i.e., your nervous system inherently knows that this is good for your survival. Okay. Why? Because it's 3,000 calories a pound. That's why. Now, The inside your nervous system are neural circuits that, under the conditions, you'll taste chocolate, feel pain from the pinprick, you'll feel sad when the sun goes behind clouds. In other words, you are a human animal, and that human animal has within them the capacity for excellent psychological experiences and terrible psychological experiences and everything in between. And its life job is to actually seek the resources that will cause it to be in better gene survival circumstances. You are actually telling me with exactly what it is that you're saying, what it is that you seek. You are seeking the resources that are associated with optimum gene survival reproduction. Those resources are esteem from a young man that would think that you are very interesting and exciting and that would be crazy about being with you, and you would consider him to be an outstanding human, and you'd have a natural desire to rub up against each other and reproduce. Okay. And then when you did that reproduction, you would find, oh my goodness, does my life have purpose? Tremendous purpose. Okay. Instantaneous discovery. Now, so what do we want to do? Well, one of the most important things you want to do is to actually, under cross-examination, you want to have a track record where you can report what the hell have you been doing with your time and energy, and what is it that you're capable of doing. People want to know that you're capable of resource acquisition. Oh, I already have enough resources. No, you were never designed to inherit resources. That is a totally unnatural state of affairs. So you find yourself in a totally unnatural state of affairs, surrounded by an environment that doesn't make any sense, where no effort results in all of the material resources that exist in the world at anything. You want a Fabergé egg, freaking buy one, stare at it, and then show it off to everybody. In other words, this is all completely out of line. And so effectively, this is not scolding. This is just attempting to educate and get clear. You are someone who is living in a store with nothing other than junk food, and you're fat and sick, and you're like, what am I to do? And the answer is, oh, well, there's a natural food store right next door. Oh God, that seems kind of ridiculous to go away from this store. This store's a bunch of tasty stuff. All they've got over there is produce. They don't even have any processed food over there. Yeah, that's right. That's what's over there. Okay. And yes, but I don't want to go over there. It's easier to just be here, and I could just suck down ice cream. I barely have to move my jaw, and I get a tremendously pleasant sensation. If I walk over there, I mean, to get a walnut, I'm going to have to freaking crack it open. So I don't want to do that. It's like, oh, I know you don't want to do that. However, that is the only way to cause the body to get back into the biochemical balance that will result in your health. If you remain where you are, you remain under the ecological circumstances that you're in, then your genetic programming to basically take the energy conserving method to try to acquire the resources, that you've got neural circuits telling you that this is optimal for your survival, that it's not true. And so in the same way, riding around in a Lamborghini or a convertible Mercedes, $140,000 convertible Mercedes, the pseudo esteem that you would get from that would indicate that you're a highly capable human being that must have earned a lot in exchange from the world. The world must value your abilities, not only what you can do, but what you must have done in order to acquire those abilities. So you're a concert pianist, you're the next Van Cliburn, people are paying you $100,000 a show to do this. You aren't born with that. You must have gone to incredible diligence in order to be that good, that the world is at your feet and you're earning $100,000 a concert. That's how you can afford that convertible Mercedes at 25 years old. So when I meet you and I say, how the hell do you have a convertible Mercedes at 25 years old? You're like, well, I'm a famous concert pianist. You're like, oh, well, that's hell of interesting. Tell me about that. And you say, well, my mom started me at 3 years old and they noticed this and I just loved it. There's just nothing like it. Da, 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 da. And then I went to, whatever, place at Yale, Juilliard, whatever. Point is that I accomplished something. That's why I have all these things. Okay. And so I'm telling you right now, the solution is to leave the ecology that you're in. That is the right solution. The right solution is for you to go to work. Okay. The right solution is for you to put yourself under effectively deprived circumstances. Don't take a nickel of it. Not one nickel. Leave it there. Okay. You want to do something? I don't know. Invest it in something intelligent. Whatever it is, let whatever it is go. Your job right now should be the following. You want to fix this problem that you've got? Give yourself 90 days to find a place to live that you can support with a job that you've got. Okay. 90 days from now. Or, maybe you can't find a job in 90 days, but I believe you can. Wherever it is that you live, you can find a job, and you can find a job that if you work hard enough at it, okay, you will actually be able to put a roof over your head. Other people do. They have no more abilities than you have right now that are putting a roof over their head. Some of them are raising children. So that means if it means being a waitress, be a waitress. Okay. And then if it means, well, Jesus, I'm smarter than that. I come from the Rothschild's fortune, for God's sakes. I'm really smart. Good. Then sooner or later, you'll learn the knowledge that you will be able to convince other people that they ought to pay you more money for it. You become a paralegal. Okay. I don't know what you're going to do, but what you should do isn't do this for a little while and then go back to the other way. I'm talking about your whole lifetime. There's no such thing as retirement in nature. Doesn't exist. Okay. You're what you are. This is a classic example of an animal in a zoo. Animals in a zoo are not happy. They are safe. They are fat. They live longer than animals in the wild because they don't get wiped out by predators and they don't have catastrophic accidents or whatever the hell happens to them. If they get a disease, they got some freaking 21st century medical doctor called the veterinarian coming in and doing blood testing on them and then giving them an antibiotic, for God's sakes. It's like they live a long time in the zoos, longer than they live in the wild. Fair enough. If you go to the wild, which is, I don't know, Des Moines, you're not going to live less long. You're going to live just as long. If you go there and you start working like other people and earn your way, there will be a strange thing will happen. Okay? You'll have cognitive dissonance about it, just as the guy that goes over to the whole natural produce place next door and leaves the other place behind. And that door is always open. You'd be like, God, I think I've had enough of this food. I'm going to go back. Wouldn't surprise me any, and it won't at all. But the point is, what's in this guy's best interest in terms of his health? There's no question what's in his best interest is health. You ought to be eating out of a natural food store, okay, and eating damn little out of a junk food store. Can he eat out of a junk food store without some compromise? Sure. And the truth of the matter is, you can use some degree of family money and family support, but really it ought to be in support of things that would be natural, normal, convenient, etc. In other words, I don't want to have to I don't know, make the nets that help me distill my own water or get the Giardia out of it. Forget it. No, of course I'm going to use it, but the right way to get your resources is to earn them. Okay. When you earn the resources, then believe me, you talk about an interesting story. How about a 28-year-old woman that for the last 3 years, even though she's born into a fortune and she was going to skate and everybody told her, do whatever you want, paint watercolors, who cares? Okay. But I didn't do that. I turned my back on that and I went and I got a job. And the first job, I lived in a house with roommates. You know what I mean? Kind of uncomfortable, but it was interesting. They're all normal people, just as smart as me, scrambling to make a living here in New York City. One of them wants to be an actress. Another one wants to be a guitar player. Another one wants to be a model, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're all scrambling people. And hell, two of us work at the same freaking high-class restaurant where we get good tips. And this is how we survive. Fair enough. Okay. Now I did that, and then what did I do? I'm like, God, I could just mail it in and go to Rio for a month and live in a penthouse and do nothing. But I didn't. I decided, you know what? I'm watching all these other people around me scramble, struggle, try to get the resources, etc., all the effort that it takes to do this. And I can respect it, and I can actually see some disagreements in the way some of them are doing it. I don't think that's such a good idea. I don't think that's going to work out. Fine, you're watching your brain get inside other people and watch their decision making, but you're at close range and you're doing the same things that they're doing. Okay. Now you decide, okay, I'm going to get this. This is $18 an hour, $20 an hour isn't cutting it. Like, I want more. I want to go to Puerto Vallarta for 2 weeks. Yeah, but you can't afford it. Fine. Okay. Well, I could afford it. Yeah, but your self-esteem can't afford it. So now what are you going to do? You're going to have to get a better job, make more money. Okay. Live simpler. You want to go to Puerto Vallarta and you're making $37,000 a year? Then fine, then earn it. Look for a deal. You know what I'm saying? The excitement of finding a deal that's a good deal that you can afford, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, you should earn your way. And not too much would be more an interesting badge of honor than somebody that actually earned their way that didn't have to. Okay. So 3 years from now, what you're feeling is the sluggish lack of self-esteem that comes with no accomplishment and no contribution to the village and no possible ability to earn legitimate esteem from somebody on the other side that would be your genetic equal. Because you're squandering your ability to learn how to and to contribute to the village, you have nothing interesting to say about any of the vicissitudes and challenges that you've traversed. And so nobody can vet how good you're going to be in the clutch. And believe me, since we're living here on the Kalahari 80,000 years ago, and I'm trying to pick a mate with the characteristics that would be the ideal mate, I damn well want to know what they've been through and what problems they've traversed and what they're made of. And if it turned out that they were actually a 21st century daughter of the Maharaja and she didn't have to do shit, even if she's smart and beautiful, I have no idea what she's worth as a mate. Okay. I need to know that she's been through some shit. I know that I have to understand and listen to her decision making. I have to hear what she put up with and what deprivation and heartache that she put up with. I need to hear all of it. Okay. If I'm going to fall in love with that person, it's not their looks or their intelligence, it's their character. Those two things are presuppositions. They are a level of requirement, but it is the third thing that we fall in love with. It is not the first two. Okay. And so what you're seeking, if you're a human being that is a quarter of the way normal, is you want to love and be loved. That's the center of the thing. Well, you're going to have to earn it. And the basis of even being able to be in a situation to be loved and have it make any sense is to have the self-esteem that comes with, having earned your stripes in the village. So that is the solution to your problem. The solution to your problem is to leave the candy store. Okay? Give yourself a date, give yourself a realistic date. In 90 days, that's the kind of deadline that I tell parents to kick out 19-year-old worthless, children that can't put away the Cheetos and put away the video games and get a job, and then they're so depressed that they even talk about the idea of having to get a job. Oh, really? Every single kid on the Kalahari is working. Every single kid is pulling its weight every day of its life. Okay, from the time it's about 9 years old, that freaking kid is calorie neutral. That kid is absolutely contributing as many calories as they burn. They're not contributing as much time and attention as they burn because the parents have to be looking out for them and educating them. The investment process will continue. The bottom line is that kid is not sitting at school, staring at screens and doing anything. They're freaking contributing. Now, you're 25 years old. You're an animal in a zoo. The zookeeper is taking your blood, giving you antibiotics, and throwing you a steak. That's no way to be a lion. Okay. And you wonder why it is that things feel flat. And the answer is they feel flat because there's no risk and there's no reward. That's a disastrous situation. Your job is to leave that cage. Okay. Leave it behind. And quite frankly, you'll learn in the long run you're best to leave it behind forever. Okay. So you want to be earning this thing all the way down. Okay. Otherwise, it's meaningless. I'd rather live in a shack, okay, where I had nailed the thing up myself, and that I would tell whatever girl that met me, this is what I did. I worked as hard as I could, and I dig this freaking wood out of the forest, and I put this thing together, and this is what I did. I'd rather do that than own the Taj Mahal, and it was given to me. Okay, so that's um, that's what I would tell you to do. That is the cure for the emotional malaise. Emotional malaise is there for a reason. Okay. No excitement. There's no gain. There's no loss. We're an animal in a zoo. Get out of the zoo. See what happens. Okay. It's a fantastic experiment that this person gets to run, that they could, in fact, actually get the hell out of the zoo, join the real world, and then um, there was I read one book by this lady, Diane, somebody. It was all about this. There's a time travel where the lady goes back in time and goes back to Scotland, and you know, it wasn't very good. But I can remember her description was beautiful as she talks about how she went back in time and there she is, and she's working like hell, and it's hard to get the food, and this, that, and it's all these struggles in this, 17th century Scotland. And and then she writes, and what I noticed was I was happy. It's like she was gone out of her 20th century existence with her comfortable everything that was okay, but she went back and there was a great satisfaction in the grit and the self-esteem and the success and the effectively deprivation and its satisfaction that was taking place. And this is precisely what the Dalai Lama talks about in The Art of Happiness. Put yourself under a deprived set of circumstances, and you will discover an enjoyment and a satisfaction when things are returned. The Anyway, the long and short of it is your best prescription to activate the moods of happiness circuitry that is latent inside your head is to actually do two things: earn your self-esteem and earn esteem. Happiness results reliably from earning esteem in the right way from the people that matter. Okay. Right now, this set of circumstances has bizarrely conspired to make it that most energy conserving mode is to do nothing and to just be self-indulgent. This is not your fault. This is a completely unnatural, ecologically invalid set of circumstances. It is as haywire as the candy store. Okay. So the candy store seems like it's an unbelievable thing and incredibly fantastic, and everybody would envy us if we were in that candy store. But the truth of the matter is, it's haywire, and it will, just as the candy store will not result in robust health, this candy store will not result in happiness. For those an animal that is designed by nature, always worried about deprivation and always trying to seek satisfaction from more resources, it is puzzling to think, wait a second, what would happen if I had all the resources? And the answer is, ooh, something not good. Okay. Put yourself in deprivation, fight for it, earn it, and let's see what happens. That's what I would have you do.
Wow.
All right.
Dr. Lisle, thank you so much. This is great.
That's enough for one day. And great to see you. God, those were 2 questions, 2 large rants.
I love it. Love it. I think a lot of our listeners, they like the lengthiness now. So I love it too.
Well, people want to listen to me and Jen where I have to get reeled in because Jen never lets me go on that long. The Living with Some Libraries where she and I still talk. But but Beat Your Genes is now, so for the time being anyway, return to its roots where, that's what happens. as Jennifer Morano, who's Alan's wife, said, I wanted to ask that a question, but the problem is I was looking at my watch and I only had half an hour. And so that's how it works. All right, Nathan. Great to see you. Thanks for everything.
Great to see you too, Dr. Lisle. Thank you. And
gotcha.
We'll see everyone next show.
Gotcha. All right, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.